Hello, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan with another episode of the Influence Continuum, and I'm particularly excited to welcome Pam Hemphill to be my guest today. You may have heard of Pam. She's been everywhere, CNN and interviewed, Newsweek. She was on Anthony Davis's weekend show that I was on and Lev Parnas is on. I'm just going to read a bit about Pam before we start. I guess I'll start by just saying you were believing in Trump, went to the Capitol on January 6th with the best of intentions, got caught up in the melee there, and eventually got arrested, was charged and sentenced to 2 months, which you served. I believe Donald Trump messaged how terrible it was that you were found guilty. In any case, you came to yourself and kind of realized that, you know what, he's not a legitimate person and I should not have trusted him. I'll save it for you. I also want to say, Pam, you're a fellow cancer survivor, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I believe you said you had breast cancer. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. And you're a retired substance abuse counselor. And so, I mean, you came to learn that the narrative you believed that was truthful was not. And now you're speaking out as a former member of the cult of Trump and doing a lot of Twitter spaces to stop the spin and to push back against all the gaslighting and lies that the J6 defendants and supporters are hurling at you. You've come to learn the thing about mind control cults is that they're your buddies until you question, and then you're the enemy, and then they attack you. Welcome to my world of leaving the Moonies. And I'm so grateful to you because you're brave and you're courageous and you care and you want to help other people, and which is dear to my heart because I've been saying for years, stop calling people names and talking down to them or trying to argue with them. Be respectful, be curious, engage them warmly, ask them questions to empower them to think for themselves. But in this environment with social media, the AI algorithms are moving everybody just to like anger, fear, distrust, and attacking anybody who's an expert, anybody who wants to talk about liberty and justice and democracy. So I'm very grateful to you. And so when I asked you, would you come on my podcast, you said, absolutely. And here we are. So, Pam, thank you. And what can we say to the public? First of all, what would you like to say as an opening statement about where you are right now, how you're feeling, and what I know you've been harassed a bunch online too, and we can talk about some of my thoughts and strategies for dealing with trolls. But tell us where you're at right now. How are you doing?
Well, thank you for having me on, Stephen. Well, I'm going to tell you, I wish I'd had your book.
I'm not paying her to hold up my book, people.
No, he's not. But
the cult of Trump.
That's the word that is very difficult for a lot of people to swallow.
Right.
And me too, because I know a lot about cults. You would think that I would have known better. I would have saw the red flags, but I did not. And I'm glad I'm talking to you today because it's like a therapy session for me. Because, that feeling of why didn't I see the signs? They were all over me, but it's like you're blinded.
I was there. I was a fanatic Moonie, and people were telling me I was brainwashed and I was in a cult, and I just thought I was doing God's will and that everybody was controlled by Satan and evil. And I was doing thought stopping as well as wishful thinking. I was also sleep deprived. And I also was just, my head was filled with propaganda. And I had no contact with ex-members or critics who, asked me good questions until my deprogramming experience. which I'll just say I didn't want to be deprogrammed. I believed 100%. But I wanted to prove to my family I wasn't brainwashed and I wasn't in a cult. So that was the hook where I said, Dad, what do you want? And he said, just listen for 5 days with an open mind. And if you want to go back to the group, I'll drive you myself. But at least your mother and I will be able to sleep at night knowing we did the responsible thing. And he had a
Yeah.
tear in his eye, and it touched my authentic self that he really cares about me. Of course, I thought he was brainwashed by the communist media. Like that was my Mooney mind,
Yeah.
on operation. But what we're now free, and now we can look back, and now it's so obvious. There were so many things that should have helped us turn on our lights of our critical thinking, etc. And that's part of the human journey, though, is realizing, you know what? You trust the wrong people, you accept lies as facts or as truth, and you can get into a rabbit hole, a literal silo of disinformation that keeps you going in it until it doesn't. And then all of a sudden, once the bubble bursts, it's like, how could I have ever believed? How could I have ever followed Sun Myung Moon? Ooh, or Donald Trump. Ooh, what a
Yeah.
despicable human being. Both of
Oh,
them
I know.
cut from the same cloth, as I wrote in chapter
Yes.
3 in The Cult of Trump. I compared him with Moon and Jim Jones and Hubbard of Scientology, all malignant narcissists,
Yeah.
right? Don't follow malignant narcissists. They're all about themselves and entitled and think they're above the law, and they pathologically lie, and they have no empathy, so they don't give a damn about anyone else. It's all about them, 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 them. And who wants to follow a leader who lies to them all the time? How can you trust anything?
Because the lie is, I'm doing it for you.
Well, what it
Yeah.
is it's a diversion
Yeah.
saying we're doing it for you. But
Mhm.
wait a minute, you just lied. You just said something that is a lie. Let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you. You
Yeah.
have a responsibility of leadership to tell us the truth. And he was there
Yeah.
on January 6th saying, come and join me up at the Capitol, right?
Yeah.
We're going to
I know.
save democracy. Well, he lost the election. His own
Yeah.
people said they lost the election. William Barr said he lost the election. Like overwhelming. 41 lawsuits he lost because
Yeah.
the election was run fairly by Chris Krebs, his appointee.
Yeah.
Right? So, but there's now people who are in these information silos on Telegram or Truth Social or whatever, and they can't entertain any other idea because it's too threatening to the inertia that they're propelled in. But they can change their mind. And that's what my message is reach out to people you know and care about, relatives, coworkers, and be warm and engage them. And you don't need to start with politics. You can just talk about sports, the weather, raising kids. I mean, universals. And you build into a conversation back and forth of tell me how you have come to believe what you believe. And Pam, I keep watching these media snippets where they go up to Trump believers and, yep, I'm in a cult. And they're like goofing on them,
Yeah.
right? And I keep saying, why don't the people in the media learn about cult mind control and how to actually engage in a meaningful way that would actually be helpful to the person they're talking to and the public? And I just
Yeah.
think it's so ignorant,
I know.
and it just seems so silly. Also, I keep meeting media pundits who are on CNN, MSNBC all the time, they haven't read The Cult of Trump, and they use the words cult of Trump, but they have no idea what the thesis is of my book, that there are actual authoritarian cults that comprise the cult of Trump.
Yeah, and in your book, you talk about they find out that Trump was married and cheated on his wife, and they still want him as president. I mean, it's insane. All the excuses they make for him, no matter what they learn about him. Oh, well, it's just the news making up lies about him.
Right. Fake news is an example of what Lifton, in his 1961 book, this was the book that helped me in my deprogramming, Pam. He talked about loaded language of the Chinese communists, and he referred to them as thought-terminating cliches.
Yeah.
Fake news. Well, it means you don't have to consider any of the information that you're hearing because it doesn't confirm your existing beliefs.
Exactly.
And for me, I like to learn. So I always would like to challenge my beliefs. And I tell people, when whatever group that I'm talking to, convert me. Please convince me. I'm open. Let's talk. Tell me how you make sense of reality.
Well, let me share this with you.
Please.
After I retired, I was out doing videotaping for people because I'd had little teeny local TV shows where I was interviewing addicts and alcoholics trying to help them. Yep. And I stopped that. It was just a volunteer position. And this lady heard about me. She says, can you come out and videotape our MAGA flags? That's how I got started. And then I saw a video on Facebook. It was Ammon Bundy. I didn't know much about him. And he was talking about the lockdowns. And I thought, I'm going to go videotape his meeting. So when I met him, he has a Bible. And I said to him, I don't break the law. You guys aren't talking about going up to, because I heard he had stood up to the FBI or something. See, I hadn't done I didn't do my homework. People said, you better be careful with that guy. I said, why? He seems to be okay. But that attraction, when I said, I don't break the law, he says, neither do I. It's like a trick. I stand up for the Constitution, and he's carrying a Bible. And they use the Bible, and they use God so much that you're thinking, this is wonderful. This is just people that want to protect our Constitution. Oh, it's so far from what they want to do.
Yep.
And exactly. that got me started.
Yep. So that's so interesting. So I'm going to ask you a therapeutic question, if I may, since you said that this is kind of a fun thing for you to talk with me about this. So I always tell my clients, now we know more, right? 2020 hindsight. So I asked the question, if you could go back in time to that first invitation, what would you say and do differently?
I don't think I would have went if I had done my research.
Right. So you would go back in time and you'd say, let me research this first. You'd go on the internet, you'd Google his name. And I always say, Google the name, Google plus the group, plus cult, or plus brainwashing, or plus scam, or plus crime. And don't just follow the first 10 hits. Go down a few more pages, because the bigger cults will suppress through search engine optimization manipulation facts, and they'll often put it up phony websites, making it sound like they're critical, but they're actually not. Yeah. So you have to be a good consumer. But you'd go back and you say, so I don't do anything illegal. He says, I don't either. You're a liar. I'm out of here. Boom, in your mind. Even though you know historically what you did, now you're rewiring your own mind based on your integrity of the here and now. And when I'm talking to Trump followers, I always like to ask them, what's your first memory of Donald Trump? And they have to stop and think about it. And sometimes they'll say, especially if they're from the Northeast, I remember him in celebrity magazines or this or tabloids with having affairs with models while his wife's pregnant or whatever. Or they'd say The Apprentice. And I'd be like, so what did you think of him? Oh, I thought he was a clown. I thought he was an arrogant SOB. Or I've heard this over and over again. I'm like, so walk me through from that first assessment, what started to shift your opinion, where you started to take him seriously?
Yeah, actually, when my brother had called and said, I don't think Trump's a perpetrator when he was saying he was going to run for president, because we were raised with narcissists and perpetrators. He says, I don't see that. And I said, well, let me check him out, and I'll get back with you. I said, I don't see it either. I think children that are raised with narcissists don't, I think we're still trying to relive our childhood, but we didn't see it. But I never liked him. I didn't like him from the past, the way he acted like he had all this power to fire you. And it was so fun to fire somebody. I thought, I didn't like that. But
right. But let me come back to something very significant, because you said you were raised with narcissists. And, when we're kids, we don't know what's normal. We don't know what's healthy. And we assume that our childhood is like everyone else's childhood. And it isn't so. And when I work with people born into unhealthy authoritarian families run by narcissists, or in a religious cult, for example, there's often corporal punishment that trains obedience, where the young people are not encouraged to grow up and become themselves and individuate, have their own beliefs, but they're trained to be obedient and keep believing whatever their parents told them.
Yep.
Right? So that becomes, from my point of view, a susceptibility to narcissists, because your parents were your authority figures, and now someone else is an authority figure. Yeah. And a lot of your childhood buttons are getting pushed unconsciously.
I was told in Adult Children of Alcoholics that I was trying to relive my childhood when I get around them to find out what I did wrong. It's like I'm reliving it by being around them to prove that I'm okay. And you can't with narcissists. It's never going to happen. But
no, that's not how you get well. The way to reform your childhood in your mind is doing the following exercise. Okay, this is the second tip that I do with my clients, Pam. And I learned this from psychologist Daniel Brown, who was one of the leading experts in the pedophile case against Catholic priests on behalf of the survivors. He taught me this. And it's an attachment repair strategy where you ask the person to go back to some traumatic memory in their childhood, and you ask them the following question: how would you have wanted an ideal mother, an ideal father, unique to your personality? How would you wanted them to treat you instead of what happened? It's an exercise I ask people to do to heal themselves. Okay. So to give an example, I'll share the example he gave me when I was part of a training. He showed a video of a woman who talked about having a nightmare when she was 8, and she cried out in the middle of the night, and her parents yelled at her and said, "Shut the F up or we'll kick the SHIT out of you." And so Dan said, I want you to imagine having a nightmare, but your ideal mother and your ideal father, unique to your personality, are there. What would you have wanted them to say or do? And this woman started going, oh, they'd immediately come into my room. My mother would turn on the lamp. She'd hug me. She'd say, oh, honey, it was just a nightmare. Mommy and Daddy are here for you now. My dad would sit at the base of the bed and he'd pat my leg and say, and I'm here too, honey.
Yeah.
And then my mom would rock me back and forth and start to sing a lullaby while my dad goes to the kitchen and warms some milk and comes back with chocolate chip cookies. And she's
Yeah.
doing this whole repair of a trauma. And she does this whole experience, comes out, and she still remembers that, in fact, when she was 8, her parents mistreated her. But now she's rewiring her own brain to have a healthy mother and a healthy father,
Yes.
right? And if you do it over and over and over again with many different traumatic things, you build a new mother and a new father
Okay.
that actually is supportive to you and loving and keeps you safe and keeps you giving you positive messages.
I've done some.
And it's so healing.
Oh yeah, I've done something similar. You've heard of self-parenting by Dr. Powell.
Tell me more. I haven't, but please say more.
It's just where I become that parent. I treat me like the parent I never had.
It's exactly the same thing, except that you're visualizing actual scenes.
Yeah, but I think coupled with that would be great.
Yeah.
Give myself chocolate cake if I want it. And sometimes I don't allow myself to have it because it's not good for the little girl. But sometimes she needs it too.
Right. Or sometimes you give a few bites instead of the whole piece, right? But you take care of the needs without doing all the bad stuff.
I've done a lot of therapy for my childhood. My mother actually was a psychopath, and my stepfathers, I had 3 of them. They were all narcissists. One went to prison for killing and molesting a 5-year-old. So I have the
oh my God, Pam!
I have the darkest childhood you could imagine.
Well, you've turned out marvelously from my point of view. You're a wonderful person. You're a good person. You care about people.
Well, a lot of it has to do, I'm in recovery. I'll have 44 years in 10 days, one day at a time from alcohol and drugs. And that program has really saved my life.
If it works for you, great. It doesn't work for everybody, but if it works for you, it's great. I know that a lot of people feel so relieved to know they're not the only one with this problem. And then they hear other people's stories and they're like, mine's not so bad compared to that one. And there's a certain amount of reassurance that there's life after abuse and trauma and drugs and alcohol and such, which is a wonderful thing. So what do you most want to convey to the audience? I mean, I know that a lot of my listeners are former cult members, and there's not a lot of people who've left the cult of Trump who have spoken honestly as you have. I know there's Michael Cohen, there's David Weissman, Batya Goldberg, Lev Parnas, but there's maybe 10 that I can name.
Denver Riggleman.
But there's got to be. Oh, Denver Riggleman. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Joe Walsh was also a supporter of Donald Trump. And there was a good documentary called The Game Is Up that featured a bunch of ex-members of the cult of Trump. And I was in it as well as a few other experts. But what we want to do is to try to make it okay to say, yep, I was wrong. Life goes on, it's okay.
But
it's not a sin to say I trusted the wrong person, and now I want freedom. I want science. I want responsible leadership in politics.
Well, I have a lot of support. However, you would think it'd be the J6 community that really attacking me. Oh, they are, but the real smear campaign is actually coming from more of the left. See, I wrote a book in 2017 on the Standing Rock protest, the Native American protest. But I had the MAGA cult when I wrote the book. It was factual, but I have my opinions, and I want to make amends for that. I'm trying to get the book down. And they will not forgive me. There are some that will not forgive me what I did in the past when I was a MAGA, following Trump and writing that book.
So So all I can say as the therapist is you can only do what's within your control to do. You can't control other people, and if people want to attack you, they're going to attack you. I kind of wonder if they're bots or if they've been
No.
radicalized themselves to go against you.
Yeah.
But what I say, is I did terrible things as a Moonie that I'm ashamed and embarrassed, but I'm trying to make amends. I've written books on the subject, and it's it's been a long ride right now, 47 years. So people aren't coming after me for what I did in 1974, 5, and 6, fortunately. But I get attacked by the left and the right. I'm not left enough. I'm not right enough. And I just keep saying I'm against authoritarianism on the left and the right. And this is about human rights for me. This is about, and rule of law and stopping fascism from usurping other people's rights, women's rights, gay rights, indigenous rights, rights of children.
Exactly.
The United States hasn't signed the UN Declaration for Rights of the Child.
Really? I didn't know that.
It's horrible. Marcy Hamilton's a law professor, CEO of ChildUSA.org. Big plug for her work. She's been working to abolish statutes of limitation for child sexual abuse around the country. And she wrote a book called God versus the Gavel, which is very interesting. And she takes the position that I believe, which is that just calling yourself a religion doesn't give you a license to lie, steal, cheat, and harm children.
Well, religion wouldn't do that.
And keep them from Medicare.
A religion wouldn't do that.
An ethical religion is about love and truth and helping the poor and helping the minorities and helping the weak and lifting them up through service, not by saying I'm special. I get direct revelations, and if you don't follow me, Satan's going to invade you and you'll be possessed. That's called phobia indoctrination. This is a technique of control by instilling irrational fears in people's minds. And that's part of my work, is explaining, hey, we have a critical thinking mind too. And we have to understand that we can be emotionally manipulated, and we need to breathe and step back periodically, unplug from the internet, walk in the woods, play with puppies and cats and children, and listen to music that's uplifting. And for those of us who are spiritual, pray, be part of a community of believers that are healthy and support you.
Exactly.
So, why are you so active on Spaces? What's your hope?
Well, I felt this urgency. It was like a desperate feeling to get people away from Trump. Because there's nobody else. When I found out about the lies, really found out with resources that were credible, that they were lying, that the J6ers were lying inside the jail, and what they were saying were happening was not happening. They were getting due process. I tried to help them by telling them the information, and they got mad at me, and that's when the smear campaign. So I thought, people need to know I'm hearing this narrative about January 6th. It's not true. And I wish there was another J6er with me that I could push out there and say, you go talk about it. Because believe me,
there will be.
I don't like doing it.
I predict there will be. But I've heard other interviews where you said that the Capitol Police saved your life.
Absolutely.
Can you tell more about what happened that day and why you say that?
Well, when I'm talking to William Dunphy, he's negotiating with the police officer. And I said, what's going on? And he says, they're going to let us to the steps. And I said, oh, that would be great. We could all be up there at the steps. Well, that wasn't going to happen. But all of a sudden they start pushing on the gates and an officer pulls me over. But I'm thinking, because I took medication from my surgery, that they're pushing too fast, and that the I know now it's like, oh my God. But my head was thinking the officer's helping me get in first. So I go around telling everybody, come on, it's your house. But I never taken pain medicine. So it affected, my mind was not. And when I realized they were not letting us in, they put me right back at the same spot. You know, this, I wish I would have told them, don't put me back. God, that drives me crazy. But they put me back and they did it again. And this time I knew they're not letting them in. They're pushing. And the same officer pulled me over again and told me to go to the captain. I went to the captain. He told me to go to the steps. I get to the steps. I can't, they pushed me down and stepped on my head, broke my glasses, cut my knee. And then I couldn't breathe. I could have died if it weren't for that officer pulling me up real quick. And so I owe him my life. And that's been part of my motive. See, when I could get there and give him a hug and say, you're the hero, and give him a gift card to go have dinner, my job.
Do you know the name of the officer who helped you?
I have clips of them, so maybe people could help me because I have the videos.
Oh, I'm sure that there are people who could, you know, do you know the group, the Capitol Hunters?
No, but I have a lot of people doing it for me. They're working on it.
But the Capitol Hunters were just amassing all the videotapes that everyone was taking of their cell phones and whatever. And when I went on the internet and said the Moonies were there, anybody, you know, have any video, they scoured it and they're like, here they are. Here's Sean Moon. Here's the bus. Here's.
No, I have the videos, my videos of them. So, but they have masks on, but I'm sure they could be discovered who they. One guy said his name was Joe that helped me out of the Capitol. Wonderful people. You know,
well, I suspect they'll be seeing you on social media or in CNN interview. Yeah. We're gonna do a blog with this interview, and we'll add links to other interviews you've done and help direct people. So if you're a Capitol officer who helped Pam, please contact her. Or contact me, and I'll put you in touch with Pam.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. God. They were not doing anything to harm anybody. I'm telling you, it was like, I couldn't believe how professional they were. They were trying to save lives. That's all. And protect the Capitol. Yeah. You know how
they were doing their job.
Irritating people, you know, make it worse.
Right.
They were just trying to calm everybody down, and they just, I cry every time I think about it because they didn't deserve that.
No, they don't deserve that at all. They're heroes.
Absolutely.
And anyone, including Trump, that says it was not an armed insurrection coup, again, is
what
just
did they
lying.
Find 120 guns? One of the sedition hunters told me about 120, maybe more.
Well, I did an interview with a former naval intelligence officer named James Scaminacci, who has taught me about fourth generation warfare. He actually did his doctorate in political sociology at Stanford. And we did an interview, I think it was 3 months after January 6th, and he said this was a military coup. Yes. They were using a lot of the public as a diversion. But this was a very planned out. They had a scout at the top. Yep. He was pointing out everything, and he called it 1,000% correct.
I have since learned from researchers that are in my Twitter space. I mean, these researchers, all the facts about January 6th. So yeah, it was a coup. Trump set it up. He was involved. They all knew what they were doing and used me as a pawn. Yep. And I go to prison. Prison.
Yeah, and Trump needs to be in prison, and so does all of the other conspirators, including the Fox people who were lying about it as well. And there's a lot of politicians currently in power that need to be held accountable that I believe are traitors to our Constitution.
Absolutely. I've been screaming about this. Why aren't they in an ethical committee with how unethical it is to be spreading Trump's lies and saying that the DOJ is weaponized against us. It's all lies. And they know it.
Yeah. Well, they want to destroy the United
Yes,
States of America and do a version to us what happened with the Soviet Union, where all these,
yes.
you know, countries separated, and Putin wants to bring them all back in. But Putin's been working very hard to make sure that we're polarized and that people want to have armed assault rifles to kill each other. He wouldn't allow people to have guns in his country,
No,
private
no, no.
citizens,
I've
for a
been studying
second.
that Project 2025. All the power they want to give to
Mm-hmm.
that's frightening. And it's not
Yep.
necessarily just to Trump, but to anybody that's president. Oh my God.
Oh, he doesn't care about
No,
Trump. In fact, Trump's a bit of a loose cannon for all the puppet masters. They want people who are more predictable and
exactly.
controllable. So it's going to be very interesting this coming year up until the election, and there'll be more and more deep fake videos and disinformation, and people are going to need to be ever more vigilant over who are they trusting for reliable information. And they also need to unplug and not be online 10 hours a day, and they need to sleep 8 hours a night so that their brain can function
Well, I'm
properly
telling you,
too.
in my space, you bring the facts with the receipts. Or we want to know the source. So if you really want
Yep.
something, know something, we got it for you. We got it. And love is coming
Yep.
in, Love Parnas, and he
That's
loves it. He's got it too, you know.
yeah, no, I've been listening to
He's
Lev
great.
again, and I just sent him a copy of The Cult of Trump because he hasn't read it yet. And I said, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
You can read it
he,
now and understand why I say it's a cult and an
but
authoritarian cult
he's
and
been
a
calling it a
fascist
cult,
cult.
the cult of Trump.
Yeah,
But how can I want
right.
what he has? He's so calm. No matter what you say to him, or even if it's a crazy question, he answers so calm. I don't have that. I still got a lot of this. Oh, Trump, because I don't know. I got to let this go. I'm working on it.
Well, people are different people, and I don't know about his background, but I do think that you need to pace
Yeah,
yourself so you
yeah.
don't
I'm gonna
burn
burn out.
out, and you don't need to do a space every
Yeah.
single night, seven
Okay.
days a week. You can do it three
Yeah.
times a week, and and I think you've put out your wish list, which is I want more people who are at January 6th
Yeah.
to come join me
That's all.
speaking out about the facts of what
Yeah,
was
if they come in
happening.
gaslighting, we won't tolerate that because we know the gaslighting. But if they have, for an example, if they have a case and they're claiming that they're not getting due process, we could bring you the receipts to prove they are. Once I get the facts
Mm-hmm.
and I don't say truth because, truth is everybody's truth, but it changes the mind. It made me think. That's what worked for me because I got the facts.
Right.
Couldn't argue with it.
Right. I agree. I agree with you. Look for facts, look for evidence. But I'm going to push back a little bit and say that in my way of thinking, there is no such thing as alternative truth or alternative facts. They're
Oh,
lies, period.
oh, I
They're just
like that.
lies.
Whoa.
And if something is legitimate, it should stand up to scrutiny. People should invite criticism, and let's talk it out. So I want to shift gears, if I may, Pam, to just some strategies for how to
Yes.
talk to people on the internet and such, because people laugh when I say, I get attacked and I'm told that I'm in the cult of Soros, or I've been brainwashed by the libtards and the liberal media. And I know why they're saying that, and I don't take it personally. And I just say, oh, I'm brainwashed? Fascinating. Tell me what brainwashing
Oh,
is, please.
that's perfect.
And then I wait. because they're stunned. Now I'm asking them to teach me about brainwashing, and they don't
Yeah.
know what to say. And then I'll say, you know, when I was deprogrammed from the
Yeah.
Moonies, the whole term brainwashing was coined dealing with the Chinese
Yes.
communists.
Yeah.
Did you know
Way
that?
back.
It was called thought reform, but it was a translation from the Chinese of wash brain. And that's what I've been studying for 47 years. And I think that I know
Oh,
what
yeah.
it
You do.
is and how to describe it. And then I say to them, I'm open to being persuaded. If you're that sure of your position, walk me through it. Go back in time to when you first heard of Trump. What was your first memory? Oh, The Apprentice. What'd you think? I thought
Yeah.
he was an asshole. Oh, interest. I don't say, yes, he was an asshole. No, I say, oh, interesting. So tell me how you came to start taking him
Yeah.
seriously as an authority figure to follow. What was it? And many people then cite the GOP
Yes.
debates when he was
Yes.
goofing on everybody
Yes.
else. And I say, you've got something there, because I watched those too, and he was masterfully
Oh,
manipulating words and
it was good.
emotions. And then I talk about neuro-linguistic programming, which I wrote about in The Cult of Trump. And they're like, what's that, typically? And I talk about Milton Erickson and process-oriented hypnosis that got put into a system by Bandler and Grinder, called NLP, or neuro-linguistic program. And it's a way of manipulating people unconsciously through the use of
Hmm.
gestures and words and tonality. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, check it out. And then I may invoke Scott Adams, the Delbert, who is a big Trumper, and who said that Trump was a master hypnotist, because he knows. He did a week course in hypnosis. I've only been taking workshops in hypnosis since
Oh,
1980, uh, hundreds of hours with the top people in the world. But I'm like, oh, okay, Scott. So you say that Trump is a master hypnotist. Say more. And he went into fifth dimension chess playing and all this other stuff. I interviewed him for The Cult of Trump. So I start, but once QAnon happened, then Scott tried to deprogram people
hmm.
from believing in QAnon, which I found fascinating. And I thanked him for that,
Yeah.
because I've done a whole debunking of QAnon and an analysis of it with the bite model of authoritarian control. But what I'm trying to say is that the art is really education and just sharing facts, but doing it not where you're
Right.
talking down to somebody, but where you're asking
Okay.
questions and engaging them in a respectful way. And also,
Yeah.
Pam, I don't respond to everyone. There are so many posts that are just
Yes.
baiting me to spend hours interacting, where they have no interest in the facts or changing their mind. They just want to drain me. So what I do is I say, if you're interested, I have a blog on this.
Oh, okay.
Here's the link. Read it, listen to the interview,
There.
and get back to me.
Yeah.
So now they have to
Yeah.
do some
I like
work.
that.
And then sometimes people will have the nerve to actually say they watched it when they didn't. So I ask them, what'd you think about this point? And then they're like, "Duh, got me."
Well,
And
what
then
about
they
those
go
those
away,
silly ones? How
right?
much are they paying you? We know you're an FBI and
Yeah, no, they've been saying that I joined the Moonies to make money. And I'm like, do you understand how much money I am capable of making aside from this? Like, I don't charge enough money to go through the work that I'm doing it as a service, and because
yeah.
it happened to me and I want to help other people. But people think I make a fortune from selling books. And I'm like, do you know how much
I know.
authors make from selling The Cult of Trump? I make a quarter or
Yeah.
35 cents a copy. You think I'm making you think I'm making millions of dollars? Please buy a million
Yeah. Bye.
copies. Then maybe I'll
Yeah.
make some money from it.
Well, no,
But
they're thinking I'm getting
so
paid by the FBI or
yeah.
somebody.
So I wish. I
Yeah.
wish. No, but honestly, so people are like, the same thing with me. And I'm like, I make a living as a consultant, as a counselor. I teach and I sell courses on my website. Yes, I make a
Yeah.
living because I have employees and
Well,
I
yeah.
want to pay my bills.
Um,
Guilty.
so
Now
some
let's
of
move
those, it
on.
feels like I should just ignore because they're silly, they're stupid. You know?
So give me a few more that if you want, and I'd be happy to tell you how I respond to it. But the bottom line is that if people genuinely are trying to check me out, I have a sense that they are. Am I a jerk or am I actually caring about what I
Oh,
talk about? And so I do my best to show that I'm the real
right.
deal. I don't lie.
No, I don't
I
either.
really don't. It's just
Yes.
like life's too complex anyway, but I want people to
Yeah.
trust me. So I will say I don't know, or I'd rather not answer. If I do know and I don't want to tell somebody something, I'll just say I choose not to answer
Well,
at this time.
they've accused me of being
And
racist.
so people accuse me of being racist and they accuse me of being an Arab, which I'm not. And then they accuse me of being a Jew, which I am. I'm guilty, Jewish. I don't like Netanyahu's policies. I hate what's happening with the ultra extremist right. It's a tragedy of human rights. My rabbi of my temple is a woman who's ordained as a conservative rabbi, and the Jewish extremists don't recognize
Is
her
it
as a
similar to
legitimate
what they want to
rabbi.
do here? The
Because
Project 2025, the same thing. Give them more power.
so I'm not sure what Project 2025 is, but I can tell you that the Christian right, who have a very
Right.
distorted view of Jesus and the New Testament, are trying to impose their
Oh,
version of Christian
right.
nationalism or dominionism,
Oh,
Seven Mountain dominionism, on the rest of the country, many of whom don't believe, or they're minorities, or they
right.
have other faith traditions, but they want
Yeah.
to impose it and make everybody think that
Right.
that's the only true way. And
No,
it's
no.
not. It's a cult. It's an authoritarian cult. So what are some other things that people have said to you that you have wondered? What else can
Well,
I
a
say
lot of it
back
is
to
just
them?
things like that. It's just that feeling of why do they hate me so much? I mean, all I'm doing, you would think you'd be happy that I left the Trump cult. But the other side, the J6 side, is that I'm a traitor and I'm the one that's going to be a part of destroying
Right.
this nation. God, I got so much power.
Right.
It's
Yeah, it's
more dealing with
projection
the
onto you
feelings
of
because
what
I'm
they're
not lying to
doing.
nobody. I have no need. I'm on probation. I better not. But I'm just kidding. It's not in me.
Right.
But what's all this anger about? Why? It's like I'm the target. They should be mad at Trump, not me. Well, you know, and
Exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
taking
So
it
don't take
personal.
it personally. Is my best. So what can I say to you to encourage you to put up a barrier, an invisible
Yeah.
force field, Star Trek, put the shields up, Scotty. Um and they can fire things at you and it bounces off, and it's like just understanding that this is part of fourth
Yeah.
generation warfare, They want to attack anybody that is in the target range. And I always, well, the other technique I want to share that's really important is with MAGA folks, I always want to talk about Chinese communist brainwashing or pimps and traffickers and how they use behavior, information, thought, and emotional control to recruit, groom, and indoctrinate slaves, especially children. And I have the credentials that I've actually helped to create a process to help sex trafficking survivors understand pimp mind control. It's called Ending the Game, thanks to Rachel Thomas and Kadisa Phelps. It's a 10-session program, and plus Paul Chang, who's a regional coordinator for the Department of Labor on labor trafficking, loves my work. So I have both credentials in sex trafficking, fighting sex trafficking, and labor trafficking, and they love my work. And I'm against Chinese communist brainwashing. So how are they going to attack me and say, you're bad for criticizing Chinese communist brainwashing, or I'm bad for outing the how traffickers control people, right? So, and I keep just trying to give the message over and over again. I just interviewed the son of William Pierce, who authored the Turner Diaries, which is the novel that all these white supremacist neo-Nazis use to do violent overthrow of the United States government. His son did an interview and talked about how brutal he was, his father was, how mean and authoritarian, and how he spent his life getting away from those beliefs and dedicating his life to orphanages to help children. He's wonderful. You should listen to the interview. He's a great role model, I think, too, that says, hey, I got out too, and life is worth living, and now we can do something, and have a bigger footprint, if you will, to help more people than maybe we had before.
The Democrats were communists, and you're taking over the nation, right?
I am not a communist. I'm against communism, is what I say to them. And I've been voting Democratic.
But they believe
so
that.
what do we do with that? Well, they lump things into black and white, all or nothing, good versus evil, us versus them. But when I say to them, you're talking in a very simple binary, and I'm against left-wing authoritarianism and right-wing. I'm against cancel culture on the left, and I'm against cancel culture on the right. So how are you going to put me in a box and just say that I'm against freedom and human rights and dignity and the right to choose? So it's interesting. But then I also say to them, I've been largely censored by the mainstream media. You have? I'm like, how many times have you seen me on TV with the cult of Trump over 4 years since the book came out? I used to be on TV all the time.
I saw.
I'm not holding my breath. I'm really
Somebody
not.
was talking about the cult of Trump. You got to watch it. I said it to you. Yeah, it's coming out more.
Yeah, but they'll talk about the cult of Trump, but have the expert on cults who can actually explain to the public. But but then the question is it the bosses who own the corporate media? Is it just plain ignorance of every single media personality?
You know what it is?
Very hard
when I
to
thought
believe.
of cult, I thought of a religion. I could never wrap my head around a president being a cult leader. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, of course, but that's an error because Lyndon LaRouche, who ran for president of the United States 8 times, went to jail for defrauding the elderly, in fact, was a political cult leader, and he was under Russian sway and was pals with Roger Stone. But Lyndon LaRouche was running a political cult for decades, putting out disinformation. And a lot of people don't think about multi-level marketing groups being cults, or they don't think about therapy as a cult, where the therapist keeps people dependent on them and they never graduate, or these boot camp cults where they strip you down and want you to stay forever volunteering for them. And then there are cults of personality. One person dominating another person, isolating them, making them completely dependent. And the United Kingdom has passed a law called coercive control about men controlling women that way. So at least they're inching in the right direction, not as a robust a model as I'm proposing in my doctoral dissertation, which, by the way, is on my website.
You know what I could hear them saying, though? Well, even if it is a cult, at least he's leading a nation in the right direction. You know, they just come up with something.
Well, right. So as a Moonie, when the Moonies were being called a cult, I'm like, I'm in the Moonies and I love it. And of course, we're being brainwashed. Our minds are dirty. And we would be smiling and happy. And so that's why just calling names is not enough. You have to get to the person and engage the real person and help them to understand that they can have choices outside of this filter that is in their head of what they think is the truth. And the fear of realizing, you know what, I don't believe that anymore. At a certain point, you just don't care. You just say, screw it. I can't live with myself if I know if it's BS, and I continue to do it. And as soon as the bubble burst for me and I realized Moon was a liar, and if he's a liar, then he couldn't be the sinless Messiah. And if he's a liar, he couldn't be a representative of God. Then why am I recruiting people to follow him blindly? Once that happened, I could never go back. I just couldn't. It was like I respect myself too much. I'd rather be digging ditches for the rest of my life than be a leader of the world, of a fascist, theocracy.
I want you to know people have gotten back with me on your book. I am pushing your book, but I want you to know this because you're helping a lot of families. There are a lot of families that are hurting because their family won't talk to them anymore. And I recommend your book. They've come back with me and saying that is helping me. They're looking forward to you being on a space someday.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're going to do a spaces, and I'll probably do a bunch of them. But what I don't recommend is if people are hardcore MAGA people, I don't recommend you give them the cult of Trump. I recommend they read it first and then educate themselves. Come to freedomofmind.com, read my Ask Me Anything for QAnon and how to talk to a Trump person, and build rapport and trust. And ultimately, I recommend make a deal with them and say, listen, I love you. I respect you. I want you as part of my life. Please accept my apology if I hurt your feelings or said anything, or because I blocked you on social media or didn't come to Thanksgiving or your birthday for years. Forgive me. Let's start over. And let's pursue an active dialogue where you share something that was important to you to contribute to where you're at right now. We will watch it together or listen to it together and discuss it. And then it'll be my turn to share something important to me. And I'd like you to listen to it, and we'll talk about it. And we'll go back and forth, because all that matters is what is true. And in the end, we can get to the bottom of what's actually factual.
I love that. One other quick question. I don't know how much time we have left. People wanted me to ask you, there's a lot of people that have all these lies about me. They want to put me in a space and have these people come in and not attack me, but Pam, how about this? Pam, how about that? I don't feel comfortable doing that. I feel like it's like, what am
Don't
I going
do
to?
it. You don't need to. And besides, the best thing that is having supporters who understand defend you. So when people are attacking me and people who have know my work come to my defense and say, "No, Steve is a good guy. I've read his books. You really should read it too." It's much more effective than me
Yeah, it
trying to
just
say, "No, no, no, I'm a good
well,
guy." Trust
they've
me,
said I don't even have
it
cancer.
doesn't
What am I
work as
supposed to do?
well.
Prove that too? I mean, how far do you go? You know?
Well, you can say, Trump said that Obama wasn't an American citizen, and then they got a certified birth certificate, but
Right.
that wasn't accepted, even though
Oh,
it was an official document. So whatever I produce, if it's an official letter from my
yeah, I
oncologist,
have.
which I'm sure you could get easily, as I could, um, but will you accept it, or will you then say it's faked? And it's like, at what point seriously, you want me to show you the picture of me when I
Yeah.
lost all my hair from the chemo? I can share that picture. I don't mind. Jamie
Well,
Raskin's hair is starting to come
well,
back. He had
actually, the FBI
lymphoma
arrested me
too
my
and had
last day of my
chemo.
radiation, so they have a picture of me.
Boy. So there you go. So it's like, you know
Yeah,
what? Life's short. Is this really how you want to spend your time? And you're
yeah,
70, I'm 69. It's like,
yeah,
you know what? We paid our dues.
yeah. I'm sorry.
Give us a
Yeah,
little slack. We're doing the best that we can. We're good people. We care about others. And hopefully more
yeah,
people will come and support you,
yeah,
Pam, so you don't need to defend yourself. And you can decide, I don't want to
yeah,
go to the spaces and be attacked, because
yeah.
who
Answer.
wants to be abused?
Yeah, yeah. They want me to
It's a
answer
form of
questions.
abuse,
If
right?
they say I'm racist, how do I prove I'm not? I mean, I got a black sponsor, but that doesn't matter to them. It's like they don't care. It's like a way to just abuse.
Well, so don't react to the word and just say, I'm for
Okay,
human rights, all people's human
and
rights.
that's
I'm for
true.
women's
Yeah,
rights, gay rights,
yeah.
minority rights, children's rights. And I like to invoke the United Nations Universal
Oh,
Declaration for Human
oh, I like
Rights and
that.
ask people to read it, because that's what my whole work is based on, is the universal
Yeah.
human rights. And I interviewed an expert on guns. He has a nonprofit, Action on Guns, and he wrote an article in a law journal saying,
Yeah,
I have a
I feel
right
like
not to be shot, and I have a right to
yes,
protect my children from being shot. You have a right to carry a gun, but I have a right not to be shot. And there are very clear guidelines that we have way too
yeah,
many guns, especially assault rifles, no background checks required by private gun
yeah,
sellers. There's so many
yeah,
things that need to be put into legislation. And I did put the
yeah.
NRA as part of the cult of Trump, because at the time I wrote the book, there were 5 million
Well,
people who were just
you
like,
have to have a
guns,
driver's
guns,
license to
guns. I
drive a
need
car, proof
more.
you know what you're doing. Why not a gun? Doesn't make sense.
Exactly. 1,000%. So, Pam
Thank
Hemphill,
you.
thank you for being you. I'm very grateful to you, and
Oh,
I
thank
do
you.
appreciate you, your honesty, your courage. And I do want to invite more people who may listen to this, who may get curious, to want to find out more. What is
Mm,
this mind control? How do I
mm,
reality test? And ask questions, and just know that you
mm.
can change your mind, and it's okay. Human beings
I can
need to
change my
learn and
mind. It's
grow.
okay. And and and
I
I'm
can change
and
my
this
mind
and this
and
is the
follow
only way I can
truth
make
and
amends.
facts.
I can't change what I January 6th.
Yep. And as far as the people attacking you about what you had written previously, I do recommend, and anyone listening, help Pam get a website, and she can write. I wrote this book. This was my mindset.
Okay.
I now don't agree with it. I believe in human rights, and then if people bring it up, you say, go
There
to
you
this
go.
URL.
Perfect.
Here's my
Perfect. We'll work
statement
on
on
that.
the book.
Okay.
You know.
No, I
And then
can't
write
write.
a book
I can't write.
about
I'm not a writer.
January 6th and all of this.
Yeah, that is.
You'll
Yeah.
find a ghostwriter
Well,
and find an
if
agent.
all the money could go
I'd
to the
love
Capitol
I'd love to
Police,
see you write.
because I'm
I
not
love
making
that.
money from January
That's
6th
a really
personally.
wonderful thing.
But if somebody wants to help me, and that money
Good.
has to go to the
Good for
Capitol
you.
Police. Period. Black and white. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
I love it. Thank you again. We're going
Thank
to
you very
wrap
much.
up. See you later. Thank you. Steve Hassan here. It's been decades since my family rescued me from the Moonies. I've been at this for over 47 years. The need has never been greater. If you're able, please consider hitting the Super Thanks button below, and it'll help us to do better. Every penny will help us toward our goal of educating the planet about undue influence. Remember, it's your mind. Only you should control it.